on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is outside the comfort zone. So we're going to be talking about learning and growing and really, where does that happen? Outside our comfort zone, right? Because if we're going to expand and experience new things, then we get to challenge ourselves and embrace the unfamiliar. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we get started, let's just take a minute to settle in and get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell and every organ. And as you exhale, exhale any fatigue, any tension, any stress. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, every electron, every molecule, every cell illuminated, energized, revitalized with vital life energy and light. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining fatigue, negativity, stress, tension. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Really softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel the sensation of that. Feel the temperature of your hands and the texture of your fingers against your palms, and allow yourselves to enjoy that wonderful sensation and bring yourself present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome. So outside the comfort zone, in the coaching work I do, I regularly have conversations. Good morning, Irma. Welcome, welcome. About feeling uncomfortable, about folks feeling uncomfortable or having a new experience that's unfamiliar, and navigating this unfamiliar, uncharted territory, and uh, the truth of the matter is that we grow. The only way to grow is by moving outside of our comfort zone. The only way to learn is to move outside our comfort zone, into something unfamiliar. Good morning, Roslyn. Happy Friday to you. Welcome. So we're talking about moving outside the comfort zone, and we don't have to necessarily go miles outside the comfort zone, although sometimes that can be a wonderfully transformative experience to take on new things that are completely unfamiliar. I think that as we evolve, we and embrace learning more and more, maybe we get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that it doesn't feel as outside the comfort zone as it normally would. Maybe it feels exciting. Maybe it feels like adventure, rather than frightening, for instance, or stressful, or sometimes, well, stress is also an important factor to growth. A plant that doesn't have any stressors is not as hardy as a plant that goes through periods of stress, because it then enables the plant to rally a resilience. And I think this is quite the same with human beings. If we I'm sure you've heard the saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That used to be one of my anthems. Thankfully, it's no longer one of my go-to internal conversations. And I say thankfully, because with that kind of anthem, what are you going to do? You're going to invite all kinds of stressors and challenges in life. But the thing is that the challenges and the stressors do, as we rise to them, provided it's not so over the top that it destroys us, uh, it stressors do enable us to rise into a more resilient experience. Good morning, Robert. Welcome. Great to have you here. So we're talking about being outside our comfort zone, and really, it is outside our comfort zone that growth happens, that excitement, adventure, right? What makes an adventure an adventure? That it's not the run of the mill everyday experience, right? So as we get comfortable with being uncomfortable, in a certain respect, or outside the comfort zone, then we gain resilience, we gain experience, we gain perspective, we expand, and I think that there's merit to that. Good morning, Suzanne. Welcome. Great to have you here. So I think when we stay within our comfort zone, that's when we have the capacity, I think, to get bored because we're not challenged, right? If we're just comfortable and complacent, perhaps. I'm not saying to put yourself in situations to be uncomfortable all the time, but I don't know about you. I personally enjoy the challenge of learning something new. I don't even think of it anymore as a challenge. It's a gift to myself to engage. Good morning, Dennis. Welcome. Good to have you here. I welcome the opportunity to engage my mind and my being and my body in taking on new challenges, new opportunities that could be seen as uncomfortable. I mean, if we're going to grow, remember the growing pains of growing up. As our physical bodies grew, there were adjusting pains that we experienced as that happened, and I think that's the case with learning. We can challenge ourselves to expand and engage our body and being more vitally in life, by learning different things. And the truth is that when we learn new things, there are frustrations that we encounter. So I had an Adobe training center for 18 years. That's not built of Adobe. It's Adobe software products that are like Photoshop and Illustrator, all these creative design softwares. And so I was pretty much exclusively teaching adult learners. And it's so interesting. The dynamic for adult learners is very different from kids, because adult learners have learned that not to fail, or adults have learned to have an aversion to failing, right? Well, you don't learn without quote unquote failing, because you're stumbling towards something, right? You're failing toward mastery, right? So good morning, Tori. Welcome. Great to have you here. Thank you. I hope you're doing well as well. So we're talking about stepping outside the comfort zone. And, one of the things that teaching adult learners reminded me over and over is that if we had to learn to walk as adults, we would all be crawling around on the floor, because to learn to walk, you fall, right? And so learning by its nature, when we are learning, we don't talk about failing, really, right? Unless we're maybe failing a test. But good morning, Tammy. Welcome. Great to have you here. But what learning is, like, you guys might be familiar with Duolingo. It's an app that is a language app, and it's a little bit gamified, and you have you get to write the language, you get to speak the language, you get to hear the language, and then you get you lose points, or you have these hearts, and every time you make a mistake, you lose hearts. So you have 5 in a session that you start with, and then when you get disheartened, hopefully not, when you lose your hearts, then you're done for the day, unless you decide to pay points that you've accumulated to refurbish them, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so I get things wrong when I do this, right? And I lose the hearts. And the thing is, I could have stories about myself around it. I could make myself wrong, or I could just anchor that the correct answer, use that opportunity to pay even closer attention to anchor the answer, the correct answer. So Robert says, yes, without trial and error, it's hard to get it right from the start. Well, this is the thing, like, adult learners have this expectation of getting it right. And when they don't, or when they don't understand something, the level of frustration is so dramatic for some people. I had people break down in tears on occasion in class, because they were so frustrated and had a lot of internal judgment of themselves, and a lack of patience with themselves to move through that outside the comfort zone space to gain mastery. If you've tried, hi Hope, welcome, great to have you here. And Suzanne says, yes, I just played with that app, Duolingo. I'm finding it enjoyable, anywhere from 10 minutes to a half hour in a day playing with the language, and I'm gaining little by little, I'm gaining competency and a greater understanding, which is really cool. Which I'm using it for Spanish, Rosalind. I'm intending to possibly maybe build a house for myself with a community of other people in Mexico, and I would like to be able to speak Spanish. I think it would be great to speak Spanish anyway, but that's part of my motivation. And Robert says, I'm a perfectionist myself. And oh my gosh, I'm a recovering perfectionist, I can say, Robert. And life is so much better, and I accomplish so much more, and I have so much more fun. Anyway, so I'm a perfectionist myself, and I'm continuously working on my website. I always get frustrated when it doesn't work from the first try. So, and Robert says, lovely language, Spanish. Yes. It's interesting. I want to just address the perception around Spanish for me. I have had a bunch of clients who have Spanish as a native language, and every now and then the way that they will reference a thing is with a pronoun, like a feminine or masculine pronoun. And like a plant, and I don't know, Irma, I know you speak Spanish, so maybe I don't know if plant is masculine or feminine, but I've I have had people refer to their plant as she, and I think that it's really interesting to me. Uh, it's really interesting to me to be having there's a different feminine in Spanish. Great, thank you, Irma. So because I've had clients who talk about their plants as she, and I love that, in that there's a it creates a different relationship with things somehow. There's like an essential foundational uh, difference of experience, a way to relate to something as a she or a he sort of. And I realize that this could be that there's challenges around the gender thing too, but rather than it, it's not like it sort of maybe it anthropomorphizes things, but it humanizes things in a way to make them more, to give them more life somehow, in my experience. And Robert says that he learned Spanish from TV. Actually, that's probably a really good way to learn Spanish. Once I get some foundation, I should start listening. There is a Duolingo podcast, a Spanish podcast that I could be listening to. I haven't checked it out yet. But I find that they have stories in there, and I find that I pick up a lot more from the stories and enjoy the stories more than the rote sort of exercises. Robert says, as when I was a kid, my grandmother and mother were watching telenovelas all day, and I had to watch with them. Oh my gosh, that's funny. But you were a kid, so you picked it up a lot more readily than adults tend to, because typically our minds have become more rigid in knowing and not knowing and absorbing, and I think that learning keeps us young. uh, Thank you, Rosalind. And Rosalind says, muy bien for your Mexico vision. Yes, there's a group called the Paradise Syndicate. You can check out the Paradise Syndicate group on Facebook even. And it's all about creating positive impact in the world through business, through community, through pretty much, like creating a way that we can make a positive impact in the world instead of the ongoing negative impact that we have despite ourselves, even with our best intentions, like by driving or by, washing our clothes that are made from synthetics that then release plastic particles. I mean, there's so much that we do that that we think is benign, but it's creating damage. So Irma says, sorry for that, Robert, about the telenovelas. That's a riot. And Robert says, when I was a kid, there were good telenovelas. Anyway, to get back to this idea of perfectionism, perfectionism is really a trap, because it keeps us stuck, right? I don't know about you, but I know that when I was in the throes of it, I wouldn't do things, I wouldn't try things, because I couldn't be excellent at them necessarily. Like I wouldn't try to paint because I had an idea that I would never be an excellent painter. Well, that's crazy, right? Who cares? Who cares if I'm going to be a wonderful painter? I can paint just for the pleasure of painting. And with websites, I used to develop websites also and teach people how to do that. And there were always things that wouldn't work and that were really challenging to try to figure out, and then you'd get it working, and the browser would be updated or something, and then what you had working wouldn't work, and it was just an ongoing challenge. So the perfectionism is an inhibitor to life, to experience, because first of all it's and a recipe for tremendous frustration and stress. So I I I find that when we if we look at mistakes and quote unquote failures as feedback, we've talked about this, but if we look at it as feedback, like about what doesn't work, then we have more freedom to continue. Again, we talked about failure being something that is bound by context. You know, it's always bound by context. It's just that we may not have conscious definition for the context by which we're evaluating our success or our failure. So, you know, if you're learning a language, you can fail 95 tests or 195 or 1,095, as long as you keep going. You know, then you can define success, you know, or you can success is also something that's bounded by context. So when rather than making a narrow definition of what success or failure would be, we can broaden our field, broaden our context, so that that judgment can fall away and we have more space to expand and grow into. So Robert asked, what programming languages did you use as a web developer? I taught JavaScript for a while, so it's not really a language. It was really script, and I also did ActionScript, so which was related to Flash at the time. So I was really more of a designer, but taught people those processes. So and Robert says, yes, I always enjoy having feedback so I can improve. So with the perfectionism, if you enjoy having feedback, then that should help to temper the perfectionism. And the thing is that we're stepping outside our comfort zone when we're learning something new. We're challenging ourselves. We're stretching ourselves, just like Maggie just stretched. I think she is growing, and that's why she stretches her wings a lot. And so that's what we get to do, is we get to stretch our wings. And Suzanne says, I'm working on my GED at the moment. Can't use my German credentials here. Can totally relate to adult learners' challenges. Absolutely, Suzanne. So good for you to be working on your GED. That's awesome. And adult learners, yeah. So if we can bring more of a spirit of play to our learning, that's how we learn as kids, right? In a lot of ways, is by playing. And so if we can introduce that as our mindset when we're learning, that is a really powerful tool. And that's kind of why Duolingo, I think, is successful, because they have these little cartoons, and you get sounds when you get something right, and so you're getting rewarded, and it has a little bit of a lot of play elements to it that make the learning lighter. When we're really serious and intent, and we put pressure on ourselves, and that can inhibit our ability to learn. So Rosalind says, at the base of failure is fear. Fear equals false evidence appearing real. So yes, I agree with you. And fear of failure. Well, so what's failure? It's judgment, right? That we impose upon ourselves, and it's the fear of that failure or that judgment uh, or um, the unknown that may keep us from stepping out of our comfort zone into life, into, wading into the water and really participating in life. And so Robert says, yes, that's great. Yes, false evidence appearing real. Exactly. And I like the saying, nobody is perfect. I always I always continue with I am nobody. That's interesting. That's interesting. I like it. That's funny. So Suzanne says, yeah, Duolingo is fun. And Robert says, definitely adding fun to the learning process makes it easier for sure. Trying to find the fun in math, says Suzanne. So interestingly, I enjoy math. In high school I taught myself algebra as a what is it, independent study. But I think the reason that I enjoy basic math anyway is that when I was a kid, we had these things called Cuisenaire rods. And they were the coolest thing. I still have them because they were so amazing. And the way they worked is they allowed me to visualize numbers, like to have a way to make this theoretical thing concrete. What they were is they were little blocks. So there was a cube that, and they were colored also. They were color coded. So the one was just this little cube. They were made of wood and they were smooth, so they were fun to play with. And then the two, I don't remember, two might have been blue. Anyway, it was a rod, a rectangle that was the size of two of the individual one cubes, et cetera, et cetera. And so the rods went up to 10. There were 10 different sizes, 10 different colors. And the way that we learned math was by adding and subtracting these cubes. Like if I wanted to see what 7 and 3 would be, I would take a 7 and I would take a 3 and I would find a 10, and I'd see them measured against each other, and it was really, really cool. And so it made it very accessible to me to make it physical, to make it concrete, literally, it, in something that I could move around, and it gave me a context and a reference for numbers to be able to think about them in this very material way. So Robert says, replying to Suzanne, math is an interesting subject, and come to think about it, I never liked math in school. Now I found out that math is in everything. Well, you know what? The way that math is taught in school is really unfortunate. I think I stopped enjoying it when we got to calculus, and it was because it wasn't made concrete for me. It wasn't made into something. It wasn't made into something that I could understand. I was given formulas for things, and I enjoyed algebra a lot because it was problem solving, and I thought that was a lot of fun. But I think the way that we teach math is just doesn't make sense. We should make it practical. And like you said, Robert, math is in everything. Numbers are in everything. But what happens is we get traumatized. We get taught these things like we're little robots trying to repeat them without really having an in-depth understanding of how it works and why it works the way it does. So Hope says, thanks, Mira. My son is autistic and he has great difficulty in understanding the concept. So this discussion is really helpful. That's awesome. And you know what I think, Hope? I looked them up at one point, and I don't know if I think Cuisinart rods are still around, but I saw that there are other kinds of math aids to help really bring this home and make things physical. So I'm glad that this is a helpful conversation, Hope. That's awesome. And I wonder if Hope, there are a bunch, I'm sure you're involved with some of the autism groups online. Um, I know that there are a lot of groups that are focused on how to mitigate some of the symptoms of autism. I know that there's a lot of work that's been done around making sure that the gut biome is supported, and that really impacts our behavior and our capacity to think, and our emotions, and so much is tied to the gut biome, and it's been shown to be very impactful for folks with autism symptoms to help to if you balance the gut biome. Anyway, I think that's it for today. So lots and lots of love, and have a wonderful weekend. I'm Mira Rubin here on the Enlightened World Network. I go live every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. It's such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. Thank you so much for joining me. And please check out the wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network over the weekend. And hopefully I will see you here next week. In the meantime, step outside your comfort zone and learn and play and grow.